Oh no, the Papa, there was once an extremely wealthy burgher who was involved in many different lines of business. His promissory notes and guarantees were accepted throughout the world. Things were very good for him. Right beneath him lived an extremely poor pauper, whose situation was the exact opposite of the burger's. Both, though, were childless, neither of them had any children. Once the burger had a dream in which people entered his house and packed everything in parcels. "What are you doing?" he asked them. "We are taking everything to the pauper," they answered. Oh, he was extremely angry by their wanting to take all his fortune from his house to the pauper, but it was useless to show his anger, for there were many people. They packed everything he owned in parcels, his merchandise, his wealth, his belongings, and took every last bit of it to the pauper's house. His merchandise, his wealth, his belongings. Took every last bit of it to the pauper's house. They left absolutely nothing in his house within the bare walls. Except for the bare walls. Within the bare walls, absolutely enraged, he awoke and saw that it was a dream. Oh, he awoke and saw that it was a dream, and though he realized that it was a dream, and that, thank God, everything was in his house, he was nevertheless very distressed. The dream absolutely enraged him, and he could not get it out of his mind. Now, even before this, the burger used to look after the pauper and his wife, and helped him generously. Burger used to look after the pauper and his wife, and to help them generously. Now, after the dream, he looked after them even better. Yet, whenever they entered his house, the pauper or his wife, the color of the burger's face changed, and he became terrified in their presence. Upon remembering the dream, the pauper and his wife used to come in frequently, coming in and out, coming in and out, as if they lived there. Once the pauper's wife came in, and he gave her something, but his complexion changed, and he was very terrified and bewildered. The pauper's wife said to him, "Excuse me, but please tell me, oh, why every time we come to you, excuse me, but please tell me why every time we come to you, your complexion changes." So he told her the whole story about the dream, and that ever since he is very distressed. "Was that dream on such and such a night?" She asked. "Yes, it was," he answered, "but what's the difference? On that very night I dreamt that I was a very wealthy lady, and people came to my house and packed everything into parcels. Where are you taking it? I have asked them to that pauper." They said, they meant to the burger, whom they now refer to as the pauper. "So what are you concerned about a dream? I also dream." But upon hearing her dream, the burger became even more extremely terrified and bewildered. It seemed clear that his wealth and belongings would be carried away to the pauper, while the pauper's poverty would be brought to him. He became extraordinarily terrified. One day, the burger's wife went on a trip in a covered carriage, taking along friends, and the pauper's wife with her. As they were traveling, a general accompanied by his army came along. The woman moved over to the side of the road for them to pass, but when the general saw that the women were in the carriage, he ordered his men to take one of them. They went and seized the pauper's wife, forced her into the general's carriage, and traveled off with her. Nothing could be done to retrieve her, for the army quickly traveled on, especially since this was a general with his army, nach, nachman. So he took her to his country. She, though, was a God-fearing woman and was absolutely not interested in his approaches. Rather, she wept bitterly, and despite many attempts to entice and seduce her, she remained a God-fearing woman. Meanwhile, the other women returned from their trip without the Paver's wife. From then on, the Paver constantly mourned and wept very bitterly over his wife. Once the burgher was passing the Paver's house. He heard how he was weeping so extremely bitterly. So he entered and asked him, "Why are you weeping so bitterly?" "And shall I not weep?" he answered. "What have I left in life? What have I left in life? Some have wealth or children, but I have neither, and now even my wife has been taken away. What is left for me?" The burgher's heart went out to the pauper. He was overwhelmed with compassion for him upon seeing the depth of his bitterness. So he went and did something spontaneous, actually crazy. He investigated where that general lives, and he went there. There he did another very spontaneous thing. It went to the general's house. There were guards surrounding it, but since he was acting with such mindlessness and confusion, walking around with such great anxiety, he walked right past the guards, who were also very astonished, and startled upon suddenly seeing a person going by in such a confused state. They too became very confused. How did he get in? Out of their confusion, all the guards let him through, and so the burgher passed by all the guards until he entered the general's house, to where the pauper's wife was sleeping. He woke her up and said to her, "Come." She recognized him and was startled. "Come with me quickly," he said. She went with him, and they were able to pass by all the guards on the way out as well. The burgher was immediately terrified upon realizing what he had done, and understood that this would completely cause a great commotion, and indeed a great commotion erupted in the general's house. So the burgher went and hid with the pauper's wife in a well full of rainwater until the commotion would pass. He remained there with her for 2 days in the well. She saw what great self-surrender he had for her and what suffering he was bearing for her. And she swore to God that whatever she is destined to have, whether greatness or success, that none of success would be withheld from him. If he wants to take all of her success and greatness for himself, while she would remain as before, it would not be withheld from him. But how was she to find a witness? So she appointed the well as witness. After 2 days, he came out of the well with her, and they went on from there. Though he went with her far away, he realized that they were searching for him even there. So he continued on, this time hiding himself in a ritual bath. Again she acknowledged his great self-surrender and the suffering he was bearing for her. And again she swore as above, this time appointing the ritual bath as witness. There too they remained for about 2 days before leaving and traveling on. There too they remained for about 2 days before leaving and traveling on. Nanach, nachman. This happened several times, hiding with her in various places, as above specifically, in 7 bodies of water, a well, a ritual bath, a pond, a fountain, a brook, a river, and a lake, a well, a ritual bath, a pond, a fountain, a pond, a fountain, a brook, a river and a lake. Wherever they hid, she acknowledged his self-surrender and his suffering for her, and swore as above, each time appointing the place as witness. They continued traveling and hiding themselves in the above hiding places until they reached the sea. When they reached the sea, since he was a highly experienced merchant and knew the pathways of the sea, he knew how to cut across it and get to his country. Finally they reached his house with the pauper's wife and returned her to the pauper. The rejoicing was extraordinary. Now in merit of the burghers, having done such a great thing and having withstood temptation with her, he was blessed that year with a baby boy, the pauper's wife, too, in merit of withstanding temptation with the general and with the burgher, was blessed with a baby girl. The girl was extraordinarily beautiful. Her beauty was superhuman. For mankind had never seen such beauty. People would say, may she only grow to maturity, on account of the difficulty in raising such an amazing rarity to adulthood. On account of the difficulty in raising such an amazing rarity to adulthood, her beauty and splendor were so extremely extraordinary, the likes of which had never been seen in the world. People would come to see her and were greatly amazed at her absolutely extraordinary beauty. But they would give her gifts and more gifts. They would give her gifts and more gifts out of adulation. Out of adulation. They gave her so many gifts that the pauper became wealthy. Meanwhile, the burgher had an idea to arrange a marriage with the pauper's daughter on account of her extraordinary beauty. He thought to himself, maybe this was the meaning of the dream of my belongings being brought to the pauper and his to me, that our children should marry, that our children should marry, and in this way our belongings wouldn't intermingle. So once when the pauper's wife came to visit the burgher, he revealed his thought, his wish to arrange a marriage with their daughter, and in this way perhaps the dream would come true. I too have had that thought, she said, but I didn't have the audacity to raise the idea that we should arrange a marriage between us. However, if you are willing, we are certainly willing, and will not stand in the way. I have already sworn to you that any good and success that comes to me will not be withheld from you. Now there is son and daughter, studied languages together in the same school. There is son and daughter, Save Yeshio Yaakov, Altinu Avdi Yahakav. Now the son and daughter. Now the son and daughter study languages together in the same school as was customary. Now the son and daughter study language together in the same school as was customary. The daughter has said, always had visitors who came to see her on account of her great novelty, by bringing her so many presents that the pauper became wealthy. Ministers also came to see her, and she found much favor in their eyes. Her beauty was extraordinary to them, for it was not human beauty at all, on account of her astounding beauty. The ministers thought about arranging a marriage with a pauper and a minister, the son wanted to marry her. However, it was improper to marry with someone like this, so they had to find some way to raise his status. They arranged for him to work for the emperor. Initially, he was made a low-ranking official, but was elevated time and again because they wanted to elevate him quickly. So he was elevated quickly from level to level until he was made a general, and then the ministers wanted to marry with him. But there were many who came forth to do so, since many ministers had been involved in elevating him. Also the papa could not give them his daughter, since he had already agreed with the burgher to give her to his son. Now this papa was now a general, was extremely successful. The emperor would send him to battle, and he was always victorious. The emperor elevated him even more, and he continued to be very successful. Eventually the emperor died. All the countrymen voted to make him the emperor, so all the ministers gathered and agreed that he would be the emperor. The former papa thus became the new emperor. He continued to wage battles and was very successful. He conquered country after country, until all the remaining countries decided to surrender to his rule willingly. They realized how successful he was, and that all the beauty and fortune of the world was his. Thus all the kings agreed that he would be the emperor over the entire world, and they conveyed him authority in a document of golden letters. Now this emperor refused to make a marital match with the burgher, since it isn't inappropriate for an emperor to make a marital match with the burgher. His wife, the empress, though was adamant regarding the burgher. The emperor realized that he could not make any match with someone other than the burgher, especially since his wife was extremely firm about this. Therefore he thought about what he could do with the burgher. He began by impoverishing him, executing plans in a way that it would not be obvious that he was behind his losses. The emperor surely has ways to do that. Nanach, nachman, meuman. So he arranged to cause him losses until he became an outright pauper, while the empress remained firm on the burgher's side. And the emperor realized that as long as the burgher's son is alive, he cannot make a match with anyone else. So he tried to get rid of the burgher's son. He devised plans to get rid of him and had him falsely accused, and had him brought to court. The judges understood that the emperor wants to get rid of him, so they passed sentence to put him in a sack and cast him into the sea. Now the empress was extremely upset about this, but even the empress is powerless before the emperor. So what did she do? She went to the officers who were instructed to cast the son into the sea, and fell before their feet and begged them that for her sake they should leave him. Why should he die? She begged them to take some prisoner who was anyway under a death sentence and cast him into the sea, and let the burgher's son go. Where her efforts were successful, and they swore to her that they would let him go. They did, and they took some prisoner and cast him into the sea and let the son go. Get out of here, they told him, and he went. The boy was mature enough to understand, so he escaped. Now prior to this, the empress had gone to call her daughter and said to her, "My daughter, you know that the burgher's son is your destined groom," telling her the entire story of what had happened to her. The burgher endangered his life for me. He was with me in 7 places, and I swore to God that whatever good comes to me would not be withheld from him. I took these 7 places as witness the well, the ritual bath, etc. So now you are all of my good, my blessing in my success. So certainly you are his, and his son is your groom. But your father, out of his grossness, wanted to kill him for no reason. But I have succeeded in saving him and having him set free. Therefore know that he is your groom, and never agreed to marry anyone else. She accepted her mother's words, and she too was God-fearing. I will certainly do as you say, she said. The daughter then went and sent a letter to the burgher's son while he was still in prison, telling him that she remains bound to him and that he is her groom. She sent it to him with a map upon which she drew all the places in which her mother had hidden with his father. Oh, all the places in which her mother had hidden with his father, which are the 7 witnesses, the well, the ritual bath, etc. She drew pictures of a well, a ritual bath, etc., and warned him very strongly to guard this picture extremely well, signing her name at the bottom. Now, after the officers had taken someone else and allowed the burgher's son to escape, he traveled about until he eventually reached the sea, where he boarded a ship and set out for sea. A great storm wind came along and carried the ship to a distant shore, where there was a desert. While the ship was broken by the intensity of the storm, the passengers were saved, and they all disembarked onto the land there in the desert, and each individual went his own way in search of food. Ships did not pass that place, since it was a desert, so they did not expect any ship to come and bring them back home. They went into the desert in search of food, scattering, each one going in a different way. The burgher's son also went into the desert, going on and on until he was far from shore. He wanted to return, but he could not. The more he tried to return, the more confused he got. The more he tried to return, the more confused he got. Nanach, meuman. The more he tried to return, the more he confused he got. The more he tried to return, the more confused he got, until he finally realized that there is no way for him to return. So he continued on aimlessly. He continued on to the desert with a bow and arrow to protect himself from the wild beasts of the desert, finding for himself things to eat. He went on and on until he emerged from the desert and reached an oasis. There was water there with fruit trees all around. He ate from the fruit and drank the water. He decided to remain there for the rest of his life, since it would anyway be difficult for him to return to civilization. And who knows if he would find another place like this, if he would leave it. So he decided to remain there and to live the rest of his life there. It was good for him there. He had fruit to eat and water to drink. Sometimes he would go out and shoot a rabbit or deer with his bow and arrow and have some meat to eat. He also caught fish for himself, for there were many very tasty fish there in the water, so he was quite happy to remain there for the rest of his life. Now after the sentence carried out upon the burgher's son, for the emperor assumed that the sentence was executed and that the son is no longer alive. For the emperor assumed that the sentence was executed and that the son is no longer alive, the emperor thought that he would now be able to find a match for his daughter, and matches were suggested with this king and that king. The emperor had appropriate quarters built for her, and she stayed there, bringing princesses to keep her company. She played musical instruments and other such pastimes. But whenever a match was suggested to her, she would say that she was not interested in words, to hear just about the suggestion, but that she wanted that the proposed groom himself should come forward. Now she was very adept in the art of lyrical verse, so she had a place skillfully erected, upon which any potential groom would stand facing her and recite romantic poetry, like a love message that a lover would say to his beloved. Kings would come to woo her into matrimony. Kings would come to woo her into matrimony, and would stand on that place, each one reciting his own poem. To some she would respond with a romantic poem via her friends, but to others who were more attractive she would respond directly. She would respond directly. raising her voice in poem, answering him with the love message. And to some who were even more attractive, she would show herself to him face to face, answering him with a poem and a love message. Yet to all of them she would conclude, but the waters have not passed over you, and no one understood what she meant. No one understood what she meant. And when she showed her face, they would faint upon seeing her great beauty. Some remained in a state of shock, while others went crazy out of love sickness. Yeah. Some remain in a state of some remained in a state of shock, while others went crazy out of love sickness, since her great beauty was so extraordinarily outstanding. But nevertheless, those suitors went crazy or remained in a state of shock. Queens continued to come seek her hand in marriage, and to all of them she answered as above. Now the burgher's son was still there in that place. He had made for himself there a place to stay, and he remained there. He too knew how to play musical instruments and the art of lyrical verse. So he chose trees from whose wood he could make instruments, and he made himself musical instruments. Strings he made from the sinews of wild beasts. The strings he made from sinews of wild beasts, and he would play and sing to himself. He would also take out the letter that the emperor's daughter had sent him, and as he was playing and singing, he would recall everything he had been through, how his father had been a burgher, and now he is banished to this place. He took this letter and went over to a certain tree. He took this letter and went over to a certain tree and made a sign on it and carved out a space in which he hid the letter. He remained there for some time. Once there was a major storm that knocked down all the trees that had been standing there, and he could no longer recognize the tree in which he had hidden the letter. Oh, and he could no longer recognize the tree in which he had hidden the letter. As long as they were standing, he had a sign to recognize it, but now that they had fallen, and the tree was intermingled among the other trees, and there were countless trees there, and there were countless trees there, he was not able to recognize the tree, and it would be impossible to chop into all the trees in search of the letter, for they were so many. He was extremely distraught and wept bitterly over this. He realized that if he would remain there, he would surely lose his mind out of such deep distress, which weighed on him very heavily. He decided that he must move on no matter what happens to him, for otherwise he is in great danger on account of this deep distress. So he placed some meat and fruit in his bag, and moved on aimlessly, but he left behind signs. But he left behind signs for himself in that place that he had left. He went on until he reached civilization. What country is this? Yes, they told him, and he asked them if they had ever heard of the above emperor. Surely they answered. He asked them, He then asked if they had ever heard of his beautiful daughter, and they answered, surely. But it is impossible to earn her hand in marriage. Realizing that it is impossible for him to go there, he went to the king of that country and told him everything that was on his heart, that he is a groom, and because of him she is unwilling to marry anyone else. But since he cannot go there himself, he is therefore handing over all the signs, the 7 waters, into his hand, and the king should go, ho, and win her hand and reward him for this. And the king should go and win her hand and reward him for this. The king realized that he was telling the truth, for it is impossible to make up such a story. He liked the idea, but he thought to himself, if he brings it back while the young man is still there, it would be very uncomfortable for him. Nanach, nachma, nachman, meuman. On the other hand, the idea of killing him was not an acceptable option to him either, for why should he be killed? For having done the king a favor. So he decided to banish him far away, about 1,000 kilometers away. About 1,000 kilometers away. The son was outraged at being banished for having done the king such a favor. So he went to a different king in the vicinity where he now was, and told him also as above, giving him also all the signs. But to the second one he added another sign, and urged him to hurry up, and set out immediately. Perhaps he can overtake the first one, and even if not, he has an extra sign that the first one does not. Now the second king also thought like the first one, so he too had the son banished 1,000 kilometers away. And the son was outraged at this, went to a third king and gave the third king an even more significant sign. Now the first king set out immediately. Arriving there, he went to the emperor's daughter's dwelling place. He had composed a poem, cleverly embedding within it all those places. That is the 7 witnesses. However, the rules of poetry forced him to arrange them out of sequence. So when he came forward and recited the poem for the emperor's daughter, she was amazed and thought he must be her destined groom. Disturbed her though that it was out of sequence. Nevertheless, she thought that perhaps the rules of poetry had forced him to use that sequence. So she decided that he must be the one, and she wrote him a letter stating that she will be his bride. Great joy and tumult broke out, for her destined groom had been found, and they prepared for the wedding. Meanwhile, the second one came running in. They told him that she was already engaged to get married, but he ignored this and said that nevertheless he has what to say that would certainly influence her. So he stepped forward and recited his poem, arranging all the places in sequence, also providing an extra sign. The princess asked him, so how did the first one know of all this? He could not have told her the truth. So he said that he does not know. So she was very amazed and startled. The first one had also relayed the places, so how could another person also know of them? Nevertheless, now seemed to her that the second one was a destined groom. So since she saw that he mentioned them in sequence, perhaps the first one had just chanced upon mentioning these places while composing his poem according to the rules of poetry, but she was not convinced. Since the bigger son had been enraged when the second king had also banished him, he went to a third king and told him also the entire story, giving him much more explicit signs. To this third one he opened his heart and told him that he had a drawing of all the places. And told him, he went to a third king and told him also the entire story, giving him much more explicit signs. To this third one he opened his heart and told him that he had a drawing of all the places, advising also inviting him to also draw a picture of all the places and bring it to her. And the third one also concluded that it would not be comfortable to bring it to his country while the young man is there. So he too sent him far away, about 1,000 kilometers. Now this third king also came running in to claim the beautiful princess as his bride. When he arrived, he was also told that two had already preceded him, but he said nevertheless, and that he has something to say that will surely influence her. No one understood though why the princess favored these men over the others. So this third one stepped forward and recited his poem with even more explicit signs, also showing the drawing of the places. Now the princess was really shocked and was completely unable to decide what to do, since it had seemed that the first one was it, and then the second one. So she said that she would not believe any until someone would bring along her own handwriting. Until someone would bring along her own handwriting. Meanwhile, the young man asked himself, how many more times will I be banished? So he decided to go there himself. Perhaps he might accomplish something. So he decided to go there himself. Perhaps he might accomplish something. So he traveled until he reached there. He said that he has something to say, etc. as above. He stepped forward and recited his poem by an even more clear and explicit sign, reminding her that they had studied together in school and other such things. He also told her that he had sent these kings and that he had hidden her letter in a tree and everything else that had happened to him. The princess, though, paid him no attention. Certainly the previous kings had also given some excuse why they didn't have the letter. Such a long time had passed.
Thank you.
Such a long time had passed, so she didn't recognize him, and she didn't want to rely on signs alone until someone would bring the letter. For she ever thought that the first one was surely him, and then the second. So she no longer wanted to listen. The young man realized that he could not remain there. So he decided to return to where he had been. To the desert where he had been staying, and remained there for the rest of his life. So he traveled until he reached the desert, which took many years. The young man had decided to remain in the desert for the rest of his life, since according to his philosophy of love of life, it would be best for him to spend the rest of his days there, sitting around and eating, etc. Now there was a pirate on the sea, and the pirate had heard that there was such a beautiful woman in the world, and he wanted to kidnap her. He personally had no need for her, since he was a eunuch. eunuch, maimed. Since he was a eunuch, but he nevertheless wanted to kidnap her in order to then sell her to some king and earn a great fortune. So he set out to actualize his plans, and this pirate was reckless, and he acted recklessly with his own life, thinking if he succeeds, he succeeds, and if not, well, what not? For what has he to lose? For he was reckless as are pirates. So he went and purchased an exorbitantly enormous amount of merchandise. He also had golden birds. A murderer. He was a murderer. Pirate, a murderer. So he went and purchased an exorbitantly enormous amount of merchandise. He also had golden birds that were made with such skill that they really looked alive. He also had golden stocks. He also had golden stocks made with the birds standing on top of the stalks. This in itself was amazing. For though these birds were large, the standing on the stalks did not break them. He also cleverly arranged that the birds would appear to be singing. One of them made a clinking sound with the tongue, another a whistling sound, and another a singing sound. All this was done skillfully, for actually there were people. nanach. Oy nach nachman. This.
Why? Cliff, me down.
He also cleverly arranged that the birds would appear to be singing. One of them made a clinking sound with her tongue, another a whistling sound, and another a singing sound. All this was done skillfully, for actually there were people inside a side room on the ship behind the birds who were doing all this in a way that it seemed that the birds were singing. They manipulated puppet strings so that it seemed that the birds were doing it, and the pirates set out to the princess's country. With all of this arriving near the city where she was, he stopped his ship at sea and let down the anchor to steady it. He pretended to be a great burgher, and people would come and go, purchasing from the hordes of precious merchandise that he had. He remained there for over a quarter of a year, while people continued to carry away the beautiful merchandise they had purchased from him. Now the emperor's daughter also wanted to purchase something from him, so she sent him a message that he should bring some merchandise. So her replied that he does not do that, to bring merchandise to a buyer's house. Even if she is the emperor's daughter, whoever wants merchandise must come to him. No one could force a burgher what to do, so the emperor's daughter decided that she would go to him. Now it was her custom to cover her face whenever she went outside, so that the people would not see her. So that the people would not see her, since people might faint by looking at her on account of her beauty. So she covered her face and went, taking along her friends. While a guard walked after her, she arrived at the burgher, who was the murderer pretending to be a burgher, purchased some merchandise from him and went to leave. The burgher said to her, "If you come again, I'll show you another thing. I'll show you other things, even nicer than this, even nicer than these. I'll show you other things even nicer than these. Truly amazing things." And she went home. She did in fact return to purchase things, coming and going, while the pirate remained there for a period of time, during which she became his steady customer, coming and going. On one. nachman. On one of her visits to him, he opened up a room for her. On one of her visits to him, he opened up a room for her, in which were standing the golden birds. She saw that this was an amazing novelty. Her entourage, specifically the god, wanted to come in as well. But the pirate said, no, I don't show this to anyone except to you, for you are the emperor's daughter. I won't let anyone else at all. Oh, so she went in alone. The pirate following in and locking the door. The pirate then took a sack and forced her into the sack. Stripped her of her clothing, dressed one of the sailors in her clothes. Covered his face, pushed him out the door while saying go. And now the sailor had no idea what happened to him, and as soon as he came outside with his face covered, the guard also, not realizing the entourage immediately began walking away with him. The sailor just walked on with the guard who was leading him. Having no idea where he was until he reached the room of the emperor's daughter. Where they removed his face covering and saw that he was a sailor, which caused a great commotion. They smacked the tailor on the face quite soundly and threw him out. For it was not his fault. He knew nothing about it. Meanwhile, the pirate took the emperor's daughter, knowing that they would surely pursue him, and left the ship, hiding himself with her in a well of rainwater until the commotion would pass. He instructed the ship's sailors to immediately cut the anchor and flee, since they would surely be pursued. They will surely not shoot at the ship. The pirate told them, since they will assume that the emperor's daughter is on it, they will pursue you. So sail away immediately, and if they overtake you, so what? That is the way of pirates. Who live completely reckless lives, and indeed that is what happened. There was a great commotion, and they immediately pursued them, but they did not find them where the ship had been, back in the well of rainwater, where the pirate was hiding with the emperor's daughter. He intimidated her not to shout, so that people wouldn't hear. He said to her, I have endangered my life to kidnap you, and now that you are already in my possession, if I lose you, my life will be worthless. So if I lose you now, and we are separated, my life will be absolutely meaningless to me. So the moment you shout, I will immediately choke you to death. No matter what happens to me, since my life will be worthless to me. She was very afraid of him. That his emperor's daughter was afraid to shout on account of her fear of the pirates. Eventually he came out of the well with her and took her into the city, traveling on until they reached a different place. But he understood that they were being pursued there as well, so he went to hide with her again in a pit of water. Eventually he came out of there and went to hide with her in a different place until he had hid with her in all the 7 places in which the burger had hid with her mother. The above mentioned 7 places. The above mentioned 7 witnesses, that is, the 7 bodies of water, the well, the pit, the spring, etc. Eventually they reached the sea. He looked around to find at least some small fishing boat for the 2 of them. He found a boat and embarked with the emperor's daughter. The truth is that he personally had no use for her, since he was a eunuch, as said, but since he wanted to sell her to some king, he was afraid that she would be taken away from him. So he dressed her in sailor's clothes, so that she looked like a man, and he set out with him. A storm broke out and swept away the boat, smashing it on some coast. Thus they came to this coast, which was a desert, where the burgher's son was. When they reached the pirate. When they reached the but experts, inspired and expert knowledge in shipping routes, and knew that no ships ever come to this desert, and was hence not afraid of anyone here. Let her go, and they went off in different directions in search of food. Soon the emperor's daughter was far from the pirate going along his own way realized that she was nowhere near him. And the pirate going along his own way realized that she was nowhere near him. He shouted out to her, but she decided not to answer him. She thought to herself, since he will anyway sell me, why should I answer him? If he eventually finds me, I can always tell him that I didn't hear. Especially since he does not want to kill me, since he wants to sell me. So she didn't answer and continued walking on. Meanwhile the pirate looked all over but did not find her. Meanwhile the pirate looked all over. Omaaiiinnn. The pirate looked all over but did not find her, so he continued looking further on but still did not find her. He concluded that wild beast must have eaten her. Continued looking further on but still did not find her. He concluded that wild beast must have eaten her. The real translation is, I think, storm of wild beasts ate him. Storm of wild beasts ate him. Wild beasts must have eaten him. She continued walking onward, finding some food to eat. She continued walking until she reached the spot where the burgher's son was sitting. Her hair had already grown long, and she was dressed like a man in sailor's clothing, so they didn't recognize each other. Yet as soon as she approached, he was overjoyed that another human being had arrived. "Where are you from?" the emperor's daughter asked him. "I was with the merchant," she answered. "Where are you from?" the emperor's daughter asked him. No, he asked her. "I was with the merchant," she answered. "And where are you from?" she asked. "I too came here with some merchant," he answered. And the two of them sat down, returning to the emperor after his daughter was kidnapped. Turning to the emperor. After his daughter was kidnapped, the empress wailed and mourned over the loss of her daughter. She complained bitterly to the emperor, for it had been his haughtiness that had caused them to lose the young man. Now they have lost their daughter. She was our entire fortune and success, she said. Now that we have lost her, what do I have left in life? She tormented him greatly. Surely he was also very upset over the loss of his daughter, but on top of that, the empress tormented and harassed him greatly, causing arguments and disputes between them. She said such nasty things to him until he was so angry with her that he decided to banish her. So he set up a court and they ruled to banish her, and she was sent away nach nachman. And after this, the emperor sent out to battle, but was defeated. He blamed it on one of the generals, because you did that, you lost the war. And he banished that general. He sent out to another. He sent out to another battle, and again was defeated. This time banishing several generals. The countrymen saw that he was acting strangely. First he banishes his wife, and then he banishes generals. They decided to overturn the tables, to retrieve the empress, to retrieve the empress and banish him, so that the empress will rule the country. And that is what they did. They banished the emperor and enthroned the empress, and she ruled the country. The empress immediately sent for the burgher and his wife and invited them into her palace. Now the emperor, after he was banished, requested of those who were accompanying him to let him free, saying, "After all, I used to be your emperor, and I certainly did good things for you. So do me a favor now and let me go out my own way. I will certainly not return. I will certainly not return to the country again. So you have no reason to worry. Just let me go my own way, so that at least I will be free for the rest of the days of my life." So they let him go. Nach, meuman. The emperor traveled on and on. In the meanwhile, several years went by. As the emperor traveled on and on until he eventually embarked on the sea, a wind swept away his boat as well, and he too reached the above desert. Eventually, he came to the place where the above two, the burgher's son and his own beautiful daughter, who was dressed like a man, were sitting. None of them recognized each other. The emperor's hair had already grown long, and several years had passed, and their hairs too had also grown long, and their hairs too had also grown long. They asked him, "How did you get here?" "A merchant brought me here," he said, and they answered his question. With a similar reply. They all sat down together to eat and drink. They also played musical instruments. They all knew how to play, for he was an emperor, and they too knew how to play. Now the young man was the most able one among them, since he was there the longest. He would bring them meat to eat. For fire they burned trees, which were rarer there than gold is in civilization, And this young man argued with them that this was a good place to remain for the rest of their lives, compared to the good that people enjoy in civilization. They asked him, "What good do you have? What good did you have that in your opinion this is a better place?" He answered by telling them what he had been through, that he had been a burgher's son, that eventually he reached here, and what he enjoyed as being a burgher's son. He had everything, but here too he has everything. So he tried to persuade them that it was better to remain there for the rest of their lives. And they asked the emperor, "Have you heard about this emperor?" He answered that he had. He asked him if he had heard about the beautiful girl, and to this he also answered that he had. Then the emperor asked them, "Have you heard about this emperor?" They answered that he had. He answered that he had. It's the burgher's son. He asked him if he had heard about the beautiful girl, and to this he also answered. The burgher's son answered that he had. The young man began to shout angrily. That murderer, the young man was angrily calling the emperor a murderer, not realizing that the person he was talking to was himself that very emperor. The emperor who gave the impression of being someone else asked the young man, "Why is he a murderer?" "It is because of his cruelty and arrogance that I am here," he said. "How so?" the emperor asked. Young man figured that he has no one to be afraid of here. Young man figured that he has no one to be afraid of it. So we told him the entire story of what had happened to him. We see from here that he had originally not told the entire story, only that he was a burgher's son. Was a burgher's son. The emperor asked him, "If this emperor would fall into your hands, would you take vengeance upon him now?" "No," answered the young man. He was a compassionate person. On the contrary, I would see to his needs, just as I am seeing to yours. The emperor began to sigh and moan. What a terrible and bitter old age this emperor must be having. I have heard that his beautiful daughter has gone lost and he has been banished, and that he has gone lost and he has been banished. The young man continued speaking on account of his cruelty and arrogance, on account of his cruelty and arrogance. He lost himself and his daughter on account of his cruelty and arrogance. He lost himself and his daughter, and I have been cast away to here. It's all his fault, it's all his fault. The emperor asked the young man again. The emperor asked the young man again if you would fall into your hands. Oh, if you would fall into your hands, would you take vengeance upon him? No, on the contrary, he answered, I would see to his knees, just as I am seeing to yours. Oh, the emperor then revealed himself to the emperor then revealed himself and said that he is the emperor himself, telling him what had befallen him. The young man fell upon him, in the young man. The young man fell upon him, hugging and kissing him, while the beautiful girl who was also there, who looked like a man, heard their entire conversation. Now it was the young man's custom to go out every day and mark off 3 trees. There were thousands upon thousands of trees there. Thousands upon thousands of trees there. After searching for the above-mentioned documents in those 3 trees, he marked them so that on the next day, he marked them so that on the next day, he would not search again. In these same 3 trees, maybe, he might find the document. When he would return, he would have tears in his eyes, on account of weeping over having searched but found nothing. Over having searched but found nothing. Nanach, nachman, meuman. They asked him, what are you searching for in these trees, on account of which you return with tears in your eyes? He told them the entire story. I know the entire story that the emperor's daughter had sent him a document, and he had hid it in the trees when the storm wind came along. Now he is seeking it in the hope that he might find it. Tomorrow they said to him, when you go in search, we will accompany you. Maybe we will find this document. So indeed they went with him and emperor's daughter, and the emperor's daughter found the document in a tree. She opened it and saw that it was indeed her handwriting. But she thought to herself that if she tells him directly that it is that it is she, that if she tells him directly that she's her, that it she removes her disguise. That if she tells him directly, and that if she removes her disguise, thus revealing her innate beauty, he might faint and die. He might faint and die, wanting that he be fit to marry her. She goes and returns the document to him and tells him only that she has found it. He immediately faints, but they revive him and bring him back to health. There was never been greater joy, sing among them. And there was then great rejoicing among them. But then the young man says, what use do I have from the document? Where will I find her? She is surely now with some king. So what do I need it for? I will continue to live out my life. So he gives the document back to her and says to her, here's the document. Take it and marry her yourself. Assuming she is a man. She prepared to go. But asked the young man to accompany her, for he, the emperor's daughter, would now surely convince the princess to marry her, saying to him, whatever good comes to me I will share with you. In other words, the emperor's daughter, who was dressed like a man, said to the young man, who did not know that she herself is the beautiful girl, to accompany him, and when he succeeds in marrying the beautiful girl, he will reward the young man. The young man realized that is the emperor's daughter, who is referred to in the masculine, was quite intelligent, and that he would certainly find and win the princess. So he agreed to accompany him. This would mean leaving the emperor alone, since he was afraid of returning to the country. So she asked him to come along as well. After he would find the beautiful girl, the emperor would have nothing to worry about, since this would signal that his good fortune had returned, and he would then be able to bring the emperor back. So the three of them went together and rented a ship. They reached the country where the empress was and continued on till the city where she was living. Where they docked the ship, the emperor's daughter realized that if she would inform her mother directly that she had returned, that she might die. So she sent a message that a man has arrived who knows some information about her daughter. She then went along herself and told the empress everything that had befallen her daughter, telling her the whole story and then telling her, and she herself is here, and she herself is here. Then she told her the truth, I am she. Then she told her that her bridegroom, the burgher's son, is also here, but added that she insists that her father the emperor be reinstated to his position. Her mother was not pleased at all with this idea, since she was extremely angry with him for having caused all this, but she was nevertheless forced to fulfill her daughter's wish. They went to bring him back from where he was banished to, but he was nowhere to be found. Her daughter then told her that he too was with them. The wedding was made, and the joy was complete. The wedding was made, and the joy was complete. Rule of the empire was handed over to the couple, and they reigned. Rule over the empire was handed over to the couple, and they reigned over the entire world. The elder emperor was now restored his former greatness, since everything was his fault, but the burgher now had great esteem, since he was the father of the new emperor, who was now the highest figure. Regarding Lot, it is written, flee to the mountains. This salutes the burgher mountain in Yiddish, Berg. Lot sired. Lot sired there, the line of the Messiah. Lot sired there, the line of the Messiah may come speedily in our days of Maine. The Israelites possessed signs in Egypt. I have surely remembered that whoever would say these words would be the Redeemer. The question is, if all Israelites knew the sign, then what kind of sign is it? Perhaps it was only transmitted to the elders. The ultimate Redeemer will surely also have signs. The Messiah will tell the Jewish people everything that has happened to every Jew every single day, to each and every one of them personally. Tamar lost the signs as brought in the medrash. Even as she was being brought out to be burnt, the evil one took the signs away from her, but Gabriel returned them to her as brought in the medrash. The Messiah will descend from her. May he come speedily in our days. Amen. The story tells about each one coming along with a love song, and how she related to each one the parallel To each one, the parallel is obvious. In the same way, many great people have done what they have done, each one reciting a song or the likes, wanting to attain the ultimate goal. But no one merits completely attaining the ultimate goal and true goal other than one who is worthy of it. Some are answered through a messenger from behind the wall, or shown a face as told in the story, but ultimately, that is, when they die, they are told that they have achieved nothing, as stated in the girl's response in this story. This will continue until the true leader comes. This will continue until the true leader comes. The exchange sons. There was once a king in whose palace was a maidservant who served the queen. She was obviously not just a simple cook who would not have had any audience with the king, but was a servant of some minor status. The time came for the queen to give birth, and this maidservant also gave birth at the same time. The midwife he went ahead and exchanged the babies to see what would develop from this and what would happen. Exchanging the babies, she laid the king's son near the maidservant, and the maidservant's son near the queen. Nanach, nachman, meuman. Nanach, meuman. Nanach, nachman, nachman. Nanach, nachman, meuman.